stage left, the audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. Rises and the players come out. Webs of lies spinning from their mouths. Stop looking, listen for a little while. And you will see a very happy smile. Pay no attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. Program reality, double thing duality. Put upon the face of all mankind. Our numbers are dead for the time. Go along to get along in the tide by the siren song. The flames are empty and the crypts are cracking open. The hordes upon you and you stand there frozen, waiting for the word. Stand in line and wait your turn. Don't follow the strings to find out who is pulling. Just drink your poison, keep on laughing and drooling, eating your own flesh. The master always knows what's best. Worldwide genocide. The overlords are hungry parasites. They point the finger and the eagles fly. Raining fire, children die. Starving plague, paralyzed. Pile of bodies rotten, covered in lies. But no one wants to talk about it. It's safer not to talk about it. I cut my strings, no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. Sorry to keep you waiting, folks. Complicated business. We got a little bit of stuff going on here with our channel. It was a little bit screwy. It threw us off after 6 seconds. I don't know, maybe because we played our video from the other streaming platform that shall not be named. Sorry. Please go over there to Rumble and like us over there. Follow us there so we can stream. We got to have 100 followers over there before we can stream on that platform.
Sometimes that happens. It goes off a little early.
A little bit. Well, are you ready to rumble? Go over there and check us out. Definitely subscribe here if you haven't already. Like the video, share it around with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and I think I said subscribe to the channel twice. But go back and watch some of our back catalog.
You're insisting on it.
That's right.
You want it.
And the notification bell, right there. Click right there. Get your notifications. No one will go live. It's going to be Sunday.
X over here. Click that
But this gonna give it
right now. Is this gonna mirror me? I don't know how this works.
Well, either way, please come back and see us again every Sunday and Thursday at 10 p.m. We go live, and this coming up, we rescheduled our interview. I'll give you a date on that for Constable Dustin Baker. He's going to be back on the channel to talk about the Elizabethton Carter County Priority News and Alerts Facebook page, and what all these pages, these citizen, these volunteer media sharing pages on social media, how they are changing society. And I think they are in a lot of ways. They're holding some of the powerful accountable and public servants accountable. So we're going to talk about that with them. It's going to be a fun conversation, I think. And Dustin is not an admin of the page, but he is a volunteer who helps with the page in some way or another. But if you look on the page, a lot of times you'll see on there stuff like, if a cop was rude to somebody and they hear it over the scanner, they'll fuss at them over there, or they'll say, hey, dispatch, you should have took down the description of the car at the traffic stop. Nobody, if somebody got hurt, we'd need to know what the description was. And basically, everything that comes over the radio, they're listening to it and they're holding the people accountable. And it's kind of a new way for the public to keep an eye on what people are doing. And they also have been letting out lots of, like Scanner Food had the plastics fire. The plastic plant fire down there in Newport. They had that out. I saw it on there before I saw it on the news. And so when people share photographs with these channels, they have a chance to get them up and share them around with the public and get this information out there even faster than the news channels, because the news channels usually want to send a van down there, get somebody on location, stand them in front of it. Meanwhile, Scanner Food's already got it out there. And they've got a network. It's kind of like it's almost like an underground journalism network, because it's the public reporting stuff directly to them and sending the information.
Like 70 retirees. That's why they got so much time.
Well, yeah, it's probably a lot of them are.
I'm not knocking. I'm just saying.
No, but they have new tools that they've never had available to them before. And you think about it,
And it is nice to be like, you're like driving. You're like, okay, well, it's like whenever I was doing my remodel job, having to drive on 26 all the way down. It was just like. It's like, why the hell am I late today? And it's like, and you look and you're like, oh, okay, that dumbass wrecked, okay.
Yep.
You can, by the time I get to work, 15 minutes later, you're like, okay, that's what happened.
And that's also watching things like Scanner Food, that we've seen like an abnormal amount of vehicle fires and weird things. Well, I mean, it may not be weird, but you wouldn't typically see that on the news, like, oh, there's been a whole hell of a lot of vehicle fires. And you also don't really see it on the news that there's been, like a lot of self-defense shooting, the crime, that unreported crime, or not unreported, but crime where charges are not filed, where an actual police report is not made. You see that stuff is way up too. And there's, that doesn't really make it into the news, but you do see it on those pages. So they're a good resource for the community. And
well, the news can't propagate it to one way or the other, so they're not going to cover it.
That's right. And the news is, remember these news, even these local news broadcasting stations, one of them is owned by Sinclair, which is independently owned more than the other ones, but it's still a national corporation. It's a large company that owns dozens of television stations throughout the country, and they're the one that famously on the YouTube video where you see all the different journalists or the reporters saying, or anchor people, this is very dangerous for our democracy or whatever. And Sinclair is more of like the traditionalist or the conservative local news media, but they're still kind of part of that big, red and blue bird, with two wings going at you from both sides. So you got them, and then you got Nexstar, which owns WJHL and all those things. Hey, wait, we meant no ill intent by it there, Stephen Lee. We know you're retired. And Tim said a bunch of retirees, and they said, well, yeah, that's probably a lot of what it is, but that's great. And
there's people have time in their hand. The only time I get worried about it is when it's like the picture on the page. It's like they're obviously driving down the road at the time. It's like, hold on, guys. Well, we can do some self-policing, but that's not illegal to do in Tennessee.
Well, Stephen Lee, though, they go out. They're part of this new independent media too, because they go out with their camera and they're mostly just exploring, the local historical sites and things like this. And they're new to the area, and as they go around and check out these new places, new festivals and get-togethers and all the weird culture,
natural tunnel,
that makes up our area. Yeah, you got to check that out, guys. It's pretty cool.
I drove by it today.
Or did we just drop again?
I think we pooped.
If you're still there, go look at Natural Tunnel State Park. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it says we're still there, even though we were
I'm
frozen.
gonna do this matrix thing, so when it kicks back in, maybe I'll do some kind of a cool dance. Look like I'm a member of No Laser Rave. No Laser Rave. That sounds like a band name.
No laser rave. I think we're kicked something back on there.
I'm like way behind.
There we go. Are we here? Hey. We're here.
T-post.
I think we're. So Steph and Lee, they do that kind of thing where they get out and it's something like local news media does too, but they're doing it independently and they're going where they want to go and showing what they experience
It
as
just
they go.
clicked that no, I'm not an agent. I have nothing against the retirees. My whole point was, it's funny because it's literally the news is being. My analogy of why it's funny to me is, if you want to get good fast food, you got to go to a fast food joint that has been taken over by people that were retired but realized they needed something to do.
Yeah.
Man, you go to the Crystals in Johnson City, spot on. It's amazing now because everybody in there is like 60 years old. They just needed a job and they're taking it seriously.
They
They're
have
like
work
taking
ethic,
pride
yeah.
in that. It's like golden brown fries. I've not had this in months, you know. So no.
Last time I ate Crystal, it was that one in Bristol, and it about gave me dysentery.
Yeah, I was going to say. I remember that. Yeah,
Fast
and
food's gotten rough lately.
that was when
especially.
Josh, that was the first time he'd eaten it in forever too, and didn't he get sick? Because he used to work there, and he's like, man, I've never need Crystal in forever. I think he was the manager of one. And we went and grabbed some Crystal when we were recording, and next thing you know, Dustin and Josh was sick. I was fine, but I got lucky.
It didn't last long. It was just some short-term dysentery, as I call it.
Wouldn't that be interesting if like the news media really did get taken over by retirees? Because like, think about it, like, before, what you would do is you would retire and then essentially become worthless. Like you were supposed to stay on vacation all the time, or you're supposed to lay on the. You're not supposed to do nothing now. You're retired.
Yeah, that's what people expect retirees to do, is just do nothing. And,
Yeah, it's like, that
nobody
seems
wants to
awful
do
to
that.
me. That seems like
Yeah.
But it seems like now with the internet and better health, and it seems like a lot of people would be retiring into a world of a lot of enjoyment and entertainment if they really wanted to do something fun now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, go fix journalism, guys.
Well, we definitely appreciate pages like Scanner Food and Elizabeth and Carter County Priority News and Alerts and all these different independent media sharing. We'll call them independent or volunteer citizen journalism. I don't know. Is it journalism? I guess it is. Yeah, because you're taking the Scanner Food, you're taking the beat, and you're putting it right up there, and you're letting people know. So it is journalism. It's just not editorialized like most journalism that we're used to. Stephen Lee says it's been freezing up a lot. I'm sure it has. We're just going to have to try to work with it and see what we can do, because everything on our end is the way it's supposed to be, but
Probably the night
it's a
before
bad
Labor Day.
time for YouTube.
It's also
Actually-
the day before Labor Day. So.
Yeah, a lot of people staying home tonight, so only so much we can do. We probably get a low priority when it comes to YouTube's bandwidth. But I did have, the title of the show tonight, That's No Moon, It's a Space Station. And yeah, I put it out on a community post yesterday, the Y-Files video on a whole variety of topics that we've discussed, every one of them on the show. We've probably done 2-hour shows on pretty much every topic that
We've never done David Icke, but we've crossed him.
we've not done David Icke, but we have talked lizard people in some cases. We have talked about some of the things that Icke has put out there, and one of the things in the Y-Files that they put out there that it was kind of surprising to me, because a lot of the people who used to talk about this stuff, including David Icke on YouTube, their videos are gone from YouTube. There used to be, when you would get on YouTube, there was, in addition to all the 9/11 videos that are all gone now, there used to be a whole lot of videos about connections to the royal family with satanic ritual abuse, including some who would say that, the royal family members would actually shapeshift into lizards, and those were the people that David Icke interviewed.
Is it Human Race, Get Off Your Knees? That's the seminar I remember he did where he was like, they put out a telecom telling me that I was supposed to report racism. So I called him and reported the royal family. Mm-hmm. And it was it's either Human Race or Planet Earth, Get Off Your Knees, and it has like this
remember
really
that one,
cheesy
but-
graphic of a line breaking through some chains.
But Ike, he was, a lot of his stuff, there's interviews with him, and I did look after we talked the other day, and I couldn't find any of his specials, because he has like 6-8 hour specials that he really fleshes out a lot of these ideas, and whether you buy them or not, they definitely make a lot more sense and have a lot more thought into them than how he's portrayed.
He still lizarding up, or has he gotten away from that?
I don't know. I've not listened to any of his talks in years and years. But the main one I watched that I enjoyed from him was called Beyond the Cutting Edge, and it was about an 8-hour long talk that he did in about 2008, and it kind of goes over the whole, global banking conspiracy and the history of that, and then the history of wars and false flags and verified events where either a false flag or some sort of coup has happened where one power faction takes over another faction, and it ends up with the banking empires and what they called the robber barons, who were, even though the robber barons were the movers and shakers of the time, the ones really advancing things, they were not the old money of the earth for the most part. The old money were the families that you don't hear their names, the 13 families. I forget what they all are. But Rothschild's one of them, like Medici. There's the old nobility of Europe. I don't know.
I think that's one of his characters off Bakanov.
I don't know, but it's the old nobility of ancient Europe. These old money that most of the people, we actually probably don't even know their names. The people who are really the richest people in the world, and even back in the late 1800s, John Rockefeller. Even though he only had he had hundreds of millions of dollars. Back then, the amount of market share he owned versus somebody like an Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos was way ahead of that. So this guy, even back then, he owned a bigger chunk of the public money. But there's always wealth that isn't public, and a lot of that lies in ancient families. And it's even with the royal families that are the public royal families, it's documented that they enter what do you call it? What do you call it? Inbreed to a certain degree to keep the bloodline pure, because there's the story that it's a pure bloodline because they're descended from God to be the rulers over the earth, and some people say that means that the alien overlords or whatever, that the royals were part of that family. So either way, Ike would mostly focus on that kind of stuff, and
really focusing on the family stick and the family tree.
Yeah, that's right.
To break that stick to reach up to heaven, like the branch.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to get into tonight a little bit is the Tower of Babel, because I feel like we may be approaching a modern day Tower of Babel, and I think that here goes the.
I'm trying to get a good
screen there.
I want to start posing for it whenever it does it.
Well, I want to get into the main topic hand a little bit before I get into the Tower of Babel, but don't let me forget, because I do want to talk about it in light of the story that you sent me on the quantum city that is Chattanooga. That thing went live in July. You sent me an article about it probably back in April, Tim, and it was Chattanooga is becoming the first quantum network. And
is it going to Bluetooth wire connect directly to Hawaii?
Oh, just
Maui's supposed to be the first smart island.
Yep. Well, it pretty much could. It could pretty much from anywhere. That would be the whole idea. Is there's an interconnected network of these quantum cities that can exchange information. Pretty much. What's the word? Instantaneously. Mm-hmm. Let's just go ahead and talk about it, because I've already put it out there. So it will tie into the main part of the show. So we'll just start here instead of starting with the Y-files. So the idea is the quantum entanglement theory, or it's actually been shown, I guess, to be a law of some sorts, because they've been able to reproduce it with multiple types of matter. But you have subatomic particles, quantum particles that are entangled at a quantum level, and basically what that means is these things are they are kind of the opposites of one another, and so if one of them goes one way and the other one goes another way, and you affect this one over here, it will affect the one that's over here. So even though they're all the way across space, somehow this particle being affected being changed affects this particle over here. So researchers have been trying to find a way to use that for things like transporters, all kinds of things like that. They want to eventually be able to transport matter that way, and they've been talking about it since the 60s with Star Wars or Star Trek, and
They had teleporters and like
Yeah.
Rogers, I'm sure.
yeah, and then what they did, I don't remember if it was like this on Buck Rogers, but they used quantum entanglement on Star Trek, and they basically
string theory on Buck Rogers.
Oh, is that right? No. I don't know when string theory came out. I think it was in like the 80s, but I could be mistaken. It could be older than that. But the quantum theories have been started. They kind of were working on them for almost 100 years now. Because when Einstein showed that general relativity meant that Newtonian physics were kind of out the window when it came to large scale. At the same time, quantum physicists like Niels Bohr were showing that on the small scale it was also, that you couldn't use Newtonian physics. So there had to be something that tied all these small scale, medium scale, like we see on here on Earth.
It was love.
and large scale. So that began the search for the
Baby,
universal.
don't hurt me.
The universal theory.
That could be a new version of Mad Gab. Mad Gab? What is that? Mad Libs. Is that right? When you write shit blank, and it says
Yeah, that's mad.
grape. Okay, you do have. Anyway. Carry on, people. Sorry.
Yeah. So anyway.
Stupid's work here.
Quantum theory came about, and ever since then there's been, the stuff of science fiction is often what becomes the stuff of actual science, because if you see something on a show, like, I'll just give you an example of a show like The Big Bang Theory. Those nerds on there all into like comic books and sci-fi and stuff like that, and then they're working at a university trying to make the things that they see in their comic books, and that's actually there's a lot of things on that show that are, just kind of dumbing down smart people for dumb people, I guess you could say. But that's one thing about a lot of these nerds is they're going to freaking kill us. These nerds are going to kill us all because they think all this, all this cool sci-fi tech that they see, they think they can make it and basically keep it all under control. And really, if we look back throughout history, it's always the nerds that have given, your jocks or your kings, your royals, your presidents, giving them the ability to kill thousands and millions of people. They wouldn't be able to do it without these smart guys. So you got to watch out for these guys. So, anyway, the whole idea of quantum entanglement began to be conceived as a way to, like I said, not only transport things, but transport information. And so the idea is you could have computers communicate instantaneously. Well, Chattanooga has become the first, and it went live in July, the first quantum network, or the first quantum city. I'll pull up an article about it here real quick, tell you a little bit more about it. But one of the things that researchers, I just read in physics.org, they made a new discovery.
Every time I see that Twitter logo now, I think you've got like something
I think
obvious.
I've got porn on.
I'm like, why don't you just leave it up there, bro?
Yeah, it's just Twitter.
No, I'm going to call you.
Why did he change it to X, though? I mean, I know he always wanted
First company he owned.
I know he always wanted it to be X, but why would you buy Twitter and then change it to X? He says he wants it to be the everything app.
Well, X used to be PayPal,
Yeah.
That's X.
if I'm not mistaken. So I mean, like I said, it's always been his thing as X. So
I don't know,
he's an
man.
X man. Reading to the symbolism too much, fellas. That's how you become all crazy. You just keep reading into it nonstop.
Darn it. I can't find that article I was looking for now.
Bee people? Oh, never mind. I thought it was like a conspiracy about bee people. I was like, hell yeah.
No.
This is what I want to watch
This is gonna
tonight.
be buzzworthy.
No, this is maybe I'll just Google it real quick. It's on the new quantum, and they discovered that the quantum entanglement creates a waveform that is like a yin yang, and I thought this was pretty interesting because when they measured, it's almost the exact thing as a yin yang. So it reminds me of things like the soccer ball in the Kabbalah that inspired Oppenheimer to give the pattern to fire the neutrons in for the atomic bomb. Here we go. So hopefully we can see this here. Check this mirror, make sure this is visible here. But this is the mysterious dance, quantum entanglement of photons captured in real time, and this visualizes the wave function of two entangled protons or photons. And so if this is how they are basically connected over space-time. So did ancient Hindus, did they just make up the yin-yang? Did they have something of a previous civilization, as I've often pontificated about a lot, that there were technological civilizations before, and that the nature of the Tower of Babel was not a physical structure, but it was human beings working together from all around the world to understand the physical nature of reality, to basically try to manipulate reality itself, thus becoming equal to gods in their own eyes and building their tower to heaven, as it were. And when they achieve that kind of power, there's so many ways for it to get out of control, whether through corruption and evil or whether through accident. It's just such powerful tools that we're dealing with. Just look at nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons are 80 years old. So,
this iteration of them.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just saying, think how much they've got since then. We find a lot of these symbols that have been represented in our measurements of modern day physics and sciences. We find these symbols in ancient books, ancient tomes, and artwork and cultures throughout the Earth, just like we find stories of ancient races coming down to Earth. So I tend to think that there was a race on Earth that had access to technology past, or at least at the level of what we have. What? Image reconstruction?
Reconstruction, I mean...
That means it is a visual representation of the waveform. So it's a holographic reconstruction of what the instruments are measuring. So it's
I understand that, but it's a reconstruction, so it's not actually a picture of it.
No, you would not see
Put it on it a little bit for me.
I don't think it does, because you would not see a picture of it, but when you measure it and you map that data out from your measurement, that's what it looks like. Mm-hmm. So it is a representation, just like if you map a Fibonacci sequence out, it may not be an actual representation of, you collect data from a set of data points, whatever it may be. How many chairs are in each room in a building, okay, and you collect these data points, and it comes out to the Fibonacci sequence, right? When you map that out, yes, it's going to come out as a spiral, but all those data points didn't actually make a spiral. But that doesn't mean that the spiral's not significant, right? Or would you think it does?
I just thought it was cooler when I thought it was a picture.
Well,
When I saw a reconstruction, I went, oh.
Well, there'd be no way to show you an actual picture of it.
I want a picture, I'm not impressed. That's hard-nosed. That's how I am.
There just would be no way for it to happen, then.
Certain conspiracies for me only require rumors and a little bit of intrigue in my mind, but I need hard evidence when it comes to physics. Very picky when it comes to science.
Okay, well, there's another way to reconstruct a 3D object in classical optics, according to physics.org. This is called digital holography, and is based on recording a single image called interferogram, obtained by interfering the scattered light by the object with a reference light. Now they did this for the two photons too. So here's how they exactly did it. What we're talking about here, reconstructing the biphoton state requires superimposing it with a presumably well-known quantum state, and then analyzing the spatial distribution of the positions of the two protons arrive simultaneously. So imaging the simultaneous arrival of the two photons is known as a coincidence image. The photons may come from the reference source or the unknown source, and the source of the photons cannot be identified. So this makes an interference pattern that can be measured, and they use that to reconstruct the unknown wave function. And this is a very advanced camera that records events with a nanosecond resolution on each pixel, according to physics.org. So they basically then, after they take these very precise pictures. They then graph the data from them, and that's what it comes out as. Because as you know from basic physics, data, when you try to capture a single point of like a photon, you can only capture a wave. You can't capture both its speed and its location at the same time. You can capture a probability wave of where what the chances are it might be in that particular place, but you could never know exactly both at the same time, and that's because of the wave of the reality, nature of reality being physical and wave based, and that's where we get into things like string theory and a whole other ball of yarn or string, as it were.
Is this the video that you have here? Not to yank you off topic.
No.
It's just the way my head works. I notice you have 4 reactions that are negative, and I'm guessing that those 4 reactions are because it's AI related.
Oh yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, I put on there that it was AI related. Isn't that a pretty good Clint Eastwood that AI made there? That's pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
they got a lot of references for him.
Yeah, that's what it is. The more references it has to draw from, so really famous people, it can draw them really well because there's a lot of photographs of them. So I can tell it to draw me I think I said to draw Clint Eastwood in the style of a Western paperback novel, and with two silver revolvers, and that's what it did. So I mostly put the lyrics in there, but some of them I just, when I put in silver bullets in my pistol in my holster, this is, let's see, what it came out with, which is pretty cool. But I needed something to be a little bit longer that I didn't, that wasn't the best thing to finish the video on, so added another one. It was fun working with that thing. And I was trying like hell to get a thumbnail, and it would not let me get one for us tonight.
Die, you bastard.
But the theme on the Y files, they're talking about the moon. We talked about the soul trap theory, that you continually reincarnate here, and it's not actually. Some people say that you're not being reincarnated by God or by the nature of reality, but your soul is being captured, and you are fake. The beings that claim to be God are actually tricking you into going back to Earth again and working for some unknown end to generate energy, some of them say. But either
Monsters, Inc.
Yeah, basically.
Man, we could make a list out of that. See, that would be included in the Y Files video, which would be the Lizard People, Monsters Inc., Prison Planet, Thundercats. The Thundercats is I'm still surprised nobody's made an Illuminati video about Thundercats.
You need to do it, man.
That's why you
I ain't got time. Time to do it it doesn't like something you did there.
So there's a long queue of requests pending.
Oh, it might be because you didn't capitalize the S.
No, it's just because there's a bunch of people trying to use it.
I'm saying that the red little squiggle doodle.
That
little squiggle doodle there saying be polite. Saturn is a proper word.
Well, like you said, a lot of the different things that he goes into one of that, like you said, Monsters Inc., he goes into how, in the theory that there are reptilians in the moon, which, I don't know really about these, okay? I hear people talk about them, so... but in that theory, apparently that the idea is that human beings were sent down here to mine gold, and this comes from the Zechariah Sitchin translations of which particular book was it? The 12th Planet, was that it? But yeah, where he's talking about how the Anunnaki basically created a slave race of human beings, and they were.
Crow's the one that gave it to us last time. Enuma Elish?
Yeah.
Enuma Elish.
Is that right? It sounds close.
That's it. And so he supposedly translated this, and the Y-Files goes into not. They say, he's discredited because some people say that he messed the translation up. Now, whether he did or not, I don't know. But the way that Y-Files says it, it's like they want you to throw out anything from the episode to do with Zechariah Stitchin, which was quite a bit of the episode. So there were some good things and bad things about the episode, but I feel like I told Tim, I said, I think I got this guy's number. And it's kind of like the...
Going to war with the Y-Files?
I'm not going to war with them because I'm not sure.
I want to. It'd be fun.
If I'm sure...
We get demolished. They got way better production value.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I'll come get that damn fish. You don't mess with me. I know it's not real, but I'll kidnap it. I'll kidnap the idea straight to your head in your sleep like Freddy Krueger. You wake up and you're like, oh, crap, I can't do the fish voice anymore. It just ain't there. Don't mess with me, bro.
That's one of the things. It's like the fish. It's like... It's almost like whoever's putting the thing together. I don't know if the guy on the camera is, the guy
There's another
behind the
podcast
channel.
I've not watched. It's called it's like After the Files or something like that.
Yeah.
And like I guess if I was bored enough, I would watch.
I'm sure there's a
but
pretty big team involved with it, though.
Probably about 2 or 3 people as a typical YouTube channel of that level could hold it together.
You think?
If you did it full time, yeah. Because imagine if it was just your job. If you woke up every day and it's like, all right, you're putting this video out this week, and if you don't eat. You'd be pretty motivated quickly. Food motivates creatives.
Well, I have no idea really, so I couldn't speculate. But it has very good production for sure, and
As long as it's not just food,
But it
training
does-
your creative ability just for food.
Yes, but
To get the currency to buy the food with.
Well, I'm saying, like, imagine tomorrow, like 1 year, like imagine you had enough photo gigs this year to quit your job. Suddenly
I
you're
imagine that often.
well, completely possible if you keep hustling. But the idea of it is once you kept doing that, suddenly you're super motivated to never quit doing that. Once you realize, oh crap, if I quit doing this, if I don't send these emails, I have to go back to Walmart. And like that I mean, that right there is enough to keep you going.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But you're good enough. You can.
well, the thing that the first thing that I noticed about the Y-Files, and tell me what you guys think. The first thing I noticed when I watched the first episode is this channel talks to us like we're children. Has a toy fish. The guy talks like this. Ooh, but what about this? Ooh,
I want you to do a whole episode like that.
But what about the moon? There's a black cube on
Do you
the
think
bottom
that's
of the moon.
presentation, or do you think it's intentional to get kids involved?
I don't know, but I feel like he's talking to people our age. I feel like that's mostly who it's made for is millennials, and I feel like he's talking to us like the programming from when we were young children, including with the talking fish, and that gives it kind of a authoritarian. Gives us that sense that, well, this is pretty interesting that this guy, he's actually looking into these theories, and he's giving us the real information, and then at the end of it, he kind of makes it always about where, well, this stuff is pretty screwy, but these crazy guys, they were,
To help you, I could argue against you, but to help you, he gives all the dumb stuff to the fish.
yeah.
Like anything that's like a dumb conspiracy, like the fish is all on board with it being liquid people.
Exactly.
So that could just be.
The fish is punny, so
Yeah.
I mean,
I like the fish. Cliff's not a big fan of the fish. I think the fish is a good touch just because. See, I actually think that's a good format for a show because my big thing with conspiracies is I like them from an entertainment perspective. So I like how he brings up the conspiracy, and at the same time he's like, here's how you can tear it down. And I like being able to have all that information without having to believe in something, whereas a lot of other shows can be heavy.
But that's the kind of thing that's where I think that he that's the thing is I feel like there are things he could tear down about it, but he doesn't. Mm-hmm. But then the things that he does tear down, he really doesn't. Like he completely dismisses anything that Ike says, because Ike a long time ago said he was the son of God on TV, basically. But he was kind of saying he discovered this whole new way of looking at life, and he felt like that we're all actually the son of God. And it gives Owen a big rant, but he famously said, "I'm the son of God" on TV, and so. At the end of it, basically, he takes everything that he's associated with Ike, and he's saying, "But I know this was all fun, but this was a madman who came up with this idea of reptiles." They're like, "Never mind that the idea."
He brought up the reptiles came from somewhere else. I don't remember though.
I can't remember either. Archons is what they were called, but there's a whole lot of theories. I'm not really up on all the things about. Some people can tell you, well, these are aliens or the Dracos, and they're from
It was
blah, blah,
Hopi.
blah.
That's what it was. He said that originally there was a story about a Hopi Indian fella talking about some lizard people from underground, but then they couldn't actually find any evidence that story was real. But my point with that one is it wasn't that all spoken word stuff. It wouldn't exist if the guy was dead. So.
Yeah. Well, there is, and one thing that he does show and kind of the thing that he gets into that is interesting is the moon stuff, and he does talk about the hollow moon, and he talks about a lot of this cube on Earth's on Moon supposedly. This doesn't really look like a cube. It has
our moon is a lot closer and larger than astrologically how it should work.
Yeah. And
that's what he does concede that in the video, though.
Yeah.
He says, I might not believe any of this other stuff, but even I'll admit that the moon's weird.
Yeah.
So.
And the moon is weird. I mean, one of the main things about the moon that is really weird is, like Dustin said, it should not, for the size that it is, it should not be locked in orbit with Earth in the way it is. Not only the size, but...
And tidal locked, where we see the same part of it. No matter what, it's always that same side of the moon.
And this is not something we see with other moons of other planets. I mean, they look at exoplanets even, so they've got hundreds of planets that they've been studying. They don't see this anywhere else. Not even just in our solar system. I won't say they don't see it anywhere else, but it is very rare and nowhere else in our solar system. And if you look at most of the moons in our solar system, you've got guys like Jupiter and Saturn with moons like, Titan. The biggest moon for Saturn is, the size of a pebble. It's barely even registers compared to Saturn. And then Jupiter, what's the biggest one there? Ganymede, Enceladus. I can't remember which one's the biggest. There's four. Yeah, there's four there.
Enceladus.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna say it. Sounds like
Europa might be
sounds like a villain.
Well, I know you didn't understand that, Bixby. But no, Jupiter's four main moons are just specks in the sky. If you look at Jupiter, through a telescope,
Wi-Files. That's the question they need to address.
What's that?
Why do they call the ass the moon?
Oh, the moon, because it's bright. It's bright and white. You put it out in the light, and it reflects the light into the eyes of whoever.
That would work for me. I've got a white butt.
Oh yeah, I guarantee it.
Full of cheese.
He went there, folks. Oh man. But the moon is peculiar in a lot of other ways, though. Famously in the Apollo 17.
Do you have a response for that?
That's why I just moved on. The moon is peculiar in a lot of other ways, though. In the Apollo 17 missions, they rammed they put seismograph equipment, basically similar to what they would do to test for earthquakes here on Earth. They put it on the moon and they slammed a lander into it, and the moon reverberated famously. Rang for what was it? He said it rang like a bell.
Day or something.
Yeah, it rang for over an hour. It reverberated, and so for the way that Earth is, they figured the moon must be the same density, because not only it was supposedly formed at the same time as the Earth, but basically with the orbit that it has, they reckoned it would have to have the same density too. But then when they rang it like a bell, like that doesn't make any sense unless it's hollow.
Because wasn't that one theory, like at the creation of the solar system, that it was actually like the moon, our moon was like another chunk of a planet that actually crashed in, which is what made the
Milky Way.
Enough of the crater to actually make for the Atlantic Ocean, how it hooks in.
That was the theory, that we actually ran into something that was where the asteroid belt is now. It would have been a planet.
I heard it was a comet, and that's where our water came from, was one of the theories.
Well, they figure the asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars, their best bet is that whatever was there was on an elliptical orbit, and that we crashed into it at some point, and that's why we have the asteroid belt there now. But they don't really know that for sure. Like almost any of the cosmology, it's they have a pretty good idea about a lot of it. But
that asteroid belt, if you look at it cosmically, how tight it still is and everything, it's pretty new at those astrological standards to the rest of the solar system.
yeah.
So it just throws into that theory, if we were actually from Mars or some other thing, because there was that stuff with like that being the planet Tiamat after.
Or was it that Mars and the other planet crashed into each other, and we got hit by the leftovers, and that's what made the moon? Is that the theory? That may be
something like that. Could be a little more.
Yeah, that would make more
Okay.
sense for it.
Messes up the whole moon being artificial part though.
Well, but they don't really know though.
That was just that one theory.
As he talks about in the Y-Files, there are, like the Arcadians are mentioned as being pre-moon people, and there were, several instances of pre-lunar people being mentioned in old historical documents, and so the idea that the moon is artificial. One of the reasons that it has. One of the things that I think is the most compelling about it, I don't know if it means, evidence for or against it in either way, but one of the things I find the most compelling, let's look at the moon here. Let's look at, maybe I'm full of crap, but I feel like all the symbolism gets thrown on its head on each version of the movie. I think they flip the symbolism from one movie to the next. That's very interesting. Maybe it's something to have a fun conversation about. But anyway, that movie goes into it too, of basically that the overlords are sucking energy from human beings by drawing in, in that case, all their brain waves. But basically their emotions and their feelings. So we see that a whole lot, and so it's not like it's a new theory that people are doing this to us. Like I said, the Zechariah Sitchin thing is from tablets that were thousands of years old. But we get into a lot of these ancient texts, including, like we talked about with the quantum entanglement earlier, including the patterns for creating the neutron field to do the first atomic bomb at the Trinity test, including even some people say the ability to create golems, which now they've created. They've created human embryos in artificial wombs completely from scratch. So I don't know if we hit that or not, but they've created human embryos without sperm and eggs now in artificial wombs. So I'd call that a golem, wouldn't you? I mean, if it actually grows into a human being, wouldn't that be
More
pretty
of a
much?
homunculus.
Homunculus.
Isn't a homunculus a kind of golem? I don't know. Maybe
Golem is an ancient creature that was usually made of clay or something like that only understood how to inflict pain because that's the only thing it was taught.
Okay, well, I thought the golem was basically symbolic of something, but
It's like the Dr. Caligari creature or whatever. What Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, if you've ever seen that. Anyway, the homunculi is supposed to be in ancient culture, like supposed to be a perfectly shaped, built in every way,
it's tiny though.
proportionate person, just much, much, much smaller.
Yeah.
Like what's his
Baby.
face? That little short kid that's always hanging out with all those UFC fighters now.
I don't know.
What is his name? It's not important. If I say his name, he might show up and punch me in the nuts. So I'm gonna do that.
Well, but
Hezbollah. There you go.
the main point I was trying to make is a lot of these ancient ideas, a lot of these ancient concepts, even down to drawings and diagrams, have been used to uncover and create new technologies that I think were around a long time ago. So I think a lot of these technologies that we have in modern times are basically us just unlocking. There was whoever had this stuff and whoever created the Tower of Babel, whoever tried to reach heaven by understanding the nature of reality and trying to manipulate it to such a degree that they were akin to gods. They inflicted serious damage on the earth and the human race. Basically, I think they destroyed the technology, but some remnants of that society survived to write stories about it, and they called it things like Atlantis and Lemuria and Tartaria, and they may have been the real names of it or may not have. But you get into the old stories, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita from ancient India that talk about, stuff 50, 60,000 years ago, giant flying cities with nuclear weapons and personal, coaches for basically the gods of the time. And you hear stories from ancient Greece and ancient Rome and ancient Norse mythology about super beings, sometimes ascending from places like Mount Olympus, way up in the sky, a realm for only the gods. And they may have like this, Hermes, the god, had like winged shoes that would fly him around. So this is all symbolic of phenomena that people of ancient Rome and Greece were not able to express in the vernacular of their time. They did not have concepts of, that's why they might call it a chariot of fire. They didn't have a concept of an aircraft, because all this technology was things that had been long lost, yet there were some who still had access to it. Eventually, they lost access to it. It stopped working, but there were pieces of it that they were able to pass down, and symbols they tried to pass on as much of the knowledge as they could, hoping someday humanity would be able to rediscover what all these things meant. And that's what I feel like that and among that, eternal life was probably that's probably the key thing that they were really looking for, and that they really tried to pass on. Because if you read into a lot of these secret society books like I have here, that's what keeps these people going. That's what they're trying to pass on, is they're trying to find the key to eternal life, and they spend their whole lives working towards it, and writing, studying and passing it down, trying to get closer and closer than to the ones before them. That's what if you look into the symbol of all these things, whether it's Freemasonry, Rosicrucianry, even Satanism, and all the different, I guess you'd say Luciferianism. The whole idea is to transcend, even in Christianity and modern other religions. The whole idea is to transcend this body into something else, right? Well, these other ones, the idea is to transcend this body, to preserve this body, not to transcend it into a new plane of enlightenment, but to stay here and stay young and stay powerful. And I think that there was a whole lot of people who were interested in doing that, and they almost got there, and then they basically destroyed civilization. And they didn't want their quest to be in vain, so there were always people who were trying to discover these things and pass them on. And I think that's how we get a lot of the building blocks of modern sciences came from discovering these ancient texts from the past, and applying them. There's codes in them that have been found. There's all kinds of crazy stuff that you wouldn't believe in the Bible, in the the Quran. There's coded texts in there that, and I'm not talking about the Bible code, even though that one is interesting too. I'm talking about stuff that's been, confirmed by, following it to find other things that, confirm it. So anyway, I think there's a lot to that leads back to an ancient technological civilization that was destroyed, and people tried to pick up the pieces and want to again recreate it. And I think that was the idea of America, was to become the new Atlantis, and to I don't know what you call it, but reset the world basically with this new. It was where the new world was going to grow out of, was America.
And it was the new world, or for the old world, or the new world was the old world. They're just reclaiming
it could be, yeah.
Speaking of unlocking mysteries and mystical texts and religious tablets, I've heard that if you can unlock the secret of Cicada 3301, you find out how to have a foot-long dick.
Is that the final thing? You put it through, you put it through.
Oh, that's the big mystery. That's the big mystery. If you're a woman and you get to the end of it, well, you're screwed, because it's still the same. I guess you can sell the secret or have a foot-long penis, but it doesn't benefit you.
What's the upside? Is that the photo they read everything through to figure it out? I don't remember. It's been years ago
since I duck. I don't remember.
You had to run it through those photo editors where you could turn it into script, and then
I would never even know how to do it, because I don't know anything about website building.
Yeah.
It would be so far beyond anything.
Yeah,
I might be able to help the audio portion, but that never was really that important.
Honestly, it was not really. It was something that only devs and computer nerds could solve it, and it wasn't like this. The puzzles weren't especially difficult if you were in that world. I mean, they were, but
wouldn't be able to judge it because I'm not in that world.
Well, I watched some videos on it, and it's like most of the stuff, in order to figure it out, if you were in that world and you knew what Updress or whatever the program is. Like, if you knew that was a program, that would help you figure out to plug stuff into it. But if you had no idea that that was a program, you'd kind of be screwed, because a lot of it was written in programming language. And even when they were helping each other, there were people that were getting through it, and they said, okay, too many of you are getting it, so you guys are gonna have to quit working together. And I don't know how many people finished it, but I watched a video on the whole puzzle and about how it all ended up, the first round of it.
Only one person got through.
I don't think so. I think a few people got through. But anyway, the people who did make it through didn't really want to. That was the kind of funny thing, because the Cicada 3301 group was basically like an anarchist, libertarian, I wouldn't say anarchist, but they looked at themselves as like a group of good hackers who thought that everybody in the world should just be able to get along, and they want to work to do, like end war and change monetary policy and all this stuff. Well, that's pretty much what the people who solved the puzzle thought too. They're like, fuck that, we don't want to do all this, we want to solve puzzles. You got any more puzzles for us to solve? Any prizes for us for winning this puzzle? So it didn't really, I don't think, work out the way, because Cicada 3301 was looking for the sharpest minds out there in order to help them in their cause of, ending war and world hunger and, all these, lofty goals.
And they decided to take on Reddit and 4chan for that goal.
Well, they thought that they would, that people would...
Sharpest minds,
yeah,
possibly
exactly.
not going to help you.
Yeah. You're just dealing with autists at that point. You're not really dealing with... altruists.
I don't know if I call it autists, but definitely not people that are going to go work for the government,
Well, they don't want to make people work for the government. They're trying to basically work against the governments of the world. So that's you want
no immunity.
You got autists who want to solve puzzles and play computer games. They're not, inclined to get into all that stuff and make that their life. So. Anyway, to get back to the Y-Files, why do you think that Y-Files hits all these subjects like this? And they kind of do this thing. It's a pattern on it, seems like, where they will say, okay, here's this crazy conspiracy theory, but wait, look at all this stuff that makes it look real. And then they throw in a lot of stuff from other conspiracies that are real, and I feel like they try to smash them together and make you say, oh, well, this stuff did look intriguing, but I saw that guy, thought he was the son of God. It was crazy. And that's kind of the way they do with everything. And they kind of take the CIA, and like if they're doing these shows on, what the CIA is doing, it's always like, oh, those crazy CIA, they're out there, making fake aliens and, totally obfuscating what they'll look at things like the MK Ultra project and things like this, but they totally don't look at what they actually did in foreign countries, which that's the main thing that the CIA has done, is that damaged us. It's not, putting the lid on people talking about UFOs. It's not MK Ultra, even the experiments at MK Ultra. They're sure they've done a lot worse with Project Monarch and all these things after that. And they say those are done, but I'm sure they've just expanded into other programs that are more reliant on technology.
The name is done for it.
Exactly.
Project Mockingbird's called the Joe Rogan Experience now.
You think so? I don't know. I feel like Joe's independent, but I could be totally wrong on that. But
I just like to make up theories. I just think I'm right most of the time.
Well, I do think you're right a lot of the time there, and I do think that there is like Project Mockingbird. I was talking Monarch, which is where basically the sex kitten program and all the different slave altars that they did on people, which. That's documented. They did that.
Dolly Parton uses a butterfly.
They broke people's minds, and the butterfly was a big symbol for it. They did break people's minds, and they used movies and music to program them to have them carry out orders without their will and without being aware of it. And they literally did this to people. So that is bad. But they get into it on the Y-Files like, oh, that was the 60s. The CIA is a bunch of good guys now. They're just wanting to stop Osama bin Laden, or
they are.
Whatever.
They only hire good people.
And I'm sure they're good. There are probably good CIA agents and CIA assets out there that really don't know anything about that. It's like, just kind of any organization, unless you want to just be, if you're going to do evil as an organization, you can't just be like open and up front and about doing evil. For the most part, you have to convince people that you're doing good things. So there are a lot of CIA agents who I'm sure do things to that they think makes the country safer. But then there are the main thing, I guess, that the CIA does is basically goes around the world and keeps the world in a constant state of conflict, and he never talks about that. He never talks about how that they basically go around the world working for Wall Street, making sure that there are coups in place where people want to buy certain real estate, that there are, there's an uprising in a certain place if weapon sales are down because of investors in certain one group or another may not be getting the return on their weapons investment, so we need to go ahead and stir something up while the CIA is there. And that's what they've been doing ever since they've been around in the 1950s, and not to mention that new evidence they've gone through where they found that the guy, I know it's just a guy on Tucker Carlson who had access to the data, but this guy, according to Tucker Carlson's show, after he had access to the full JFK files, he said it's all a lie, the country's over, it's all fake. And Tucker asked him, did the CIA kill Kennedy? And he said, yeah, I think they had something to do. I think they were involved in it, or yes, they were involved in it. Pretty much. And basically, so these guys were created in the early 50s, grew out of the OSS, and immediately took over the country for foreign investors and started driving the foreign policy of America from the 50s on, and dragging us into wars, keeping us in a constant state of conflict. That's the real bad thing that the CIA does. As sexy as MK Ultra and Monarch sounds, like the real deal is CIA going to Nicaragua and field guys poisoning children's milk bottles, putting concrete in them. So knocking the bridges down so the food can't deliver, so that the person in charge gets blamed for it, and then machine gunning crowds in Iran and throwing out flyers in support of the political candidate that they wanted to take out of power. So this is what they do all around the world, and this is what doesn't get talked about on things like the Y-Files when they go into these theories, and they try to make you feel better about, oh, this stuff is all really intriguing, but don't worry, a crazy guy's the one saying it, and the CIA was involved, but don't worry, they're not into that kind of thing anymore. They're just out there, trying to win the Cold War, So that's what I ultimately get from the Y-Files, and I do think he ends the show on a good message, though. But I kind of think you have to do that in order to be effective at this kind of this kind of episode, this kind of show. But he says, basically, so if you don't want to be part of harvesting negative energy, then let's not create negative energy. Let's be nice to one another, and you can create the reality that you want. And I do agree with that. I think you can. I think you're to a lot of degrees. You think, therefore you are. Whatever it is that you.
The Soul Trap community of all the conspiracy groups I've ever come across is probably the most just constantly salty.
Yeah, I'm not into the Soul Trap thing, and that is one thing he got into, and that was another thing that he did get into, and that was when he started researching. He got into the Soul Trap community. He said he ran into a constant state of negativity, and he was right about that. But I think he used that to basically, look, we're the Y-Files. We'll go out here into these communities of these people who think like this. We'll get in and mix it up with them so you don't have to, because they're just full of negativity and it makes you feel bad to be around them, and that's why they're just seeking some sort of control, but they're negative people. And overall, I don't find that to be the case. Now, some groups, I do find that to be the case. Some online presences, the Soul Trap community being one of them. And then, of course, like your anti-Semitic ones, those are pretty much all like that too. You don't.
That's a giant group that kind of blends across all conspiracy groups.
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, they're not representative, and it's almost like and I think to a degree, especially the anti-Semitic ones are put out there they're intentionally fronted to put out there. And you saw that guy down there in I don't know where he was, but he was on the news. He had tattoos on his face, and he was saying a bunch of Nazi shit, and had some, Nazis with him. And a lot of people are saying they're feds. I don't know. There's probably feds in the group, but I think these were real people. But there are people out there who think like that, but they're often used to poison the well too, because they want you to associate some of these certain movements. Like they really wanted you to associate Donald Trump with Richard Spencer, right? David Duke, the only racist, the only KKK guy that anybody knows is David Duke. They wanted to make sure that you thought Donald Trump and David Duke were big friends, which David Duke did. I think he liked Donald Trump at some time when Donald Trump was running the first time, but he quickly distanced himself from him, said he didn't like Trump anymore. But anyway, they wanted to make that association. That's kind of the way they do with the anti-Semitic groups, is they try to associate anything that is anti-Semitic with anything that goes after, say, international banking, saying, well, if you're interested in keeping an eye on rich and powerful elite bankers and holding them accountable for the effect that their moves have on the rest of the world, well, then that's anti-Semitic, and you have to be dealt with, because we don't want another, Hitler. And so I think that's a similar tactic that's being used here by the Y-Files when they're putting this forward. So this is something I've seen in several of their videos. I'm not saying that they're, controlled opposition or whatever, but it's sure looking like that to me, because that's just my theory. That's just some of the things I've noticed about it. Maybe I'm just suspicious, but I don't see a channel like this talking about these topics getting 5 million views in a day without being accepted.
Well,
and why would it be accepted?
If you go look up that lizard conspiracy, you can find one by like the History Channel, one by A&E. Mm-hmm. So they're all doing it.
But they're all the sanitized version of it, and they were done on broadcast television. The Y-Files is the internet version.
Yeah, but
the History Channel ones are the same as the Y-Files too.
Yeah, but I don't know. He plays the YouTube handbook for success to a T.
Yeah.
He uses the algorithm like a handy surfboard.
Yeah.
I think it might just be just prime. Jim Brewer has a conspiracy channel. It's crazy. Everybody has a conspiracy channel.
Yeah. And but I mean, it could be that, but I feel like that there's plenty of conspiracy channels out there. There's plenty of very entertaining conspiracy channels out there, but this is the one that pops up in my feed constantly, and it's one that touches on subjects that are verboten in a lot of cases, and will get you banned from YouTube for making channels. Like I said, there's not a lot of these lizard people channels, movies up here that actually show the interviews with the people who say they were involved with them, or that actually explain the idea that, and he briefly goes into it in the Y-Files video, saying, well, these are, they're using technology beamed through the moon to manipulate people's perceptions so that they will see human beings instead of lizards. And I don't feel like that was the idea at all. I feel like the idea of that these people were lizards is not that they were physical lizards, but that we are all projections of energy. If you get right down to what we actually are, whether it's string theory or whatever it is, we're pieces of mass vibrating, pieces of matter vibrating. We're energy vibrating and condensing into matter, so that we form a physical being, right? And all that it really is energy. When we see something, it's just light reflecting off of it. So I'm not actually looking at Dustin. I'm seeing light reflecting off of Dustin's body, and I'm basically putting together a 3D map.
Spaghetti in between your skull is saying this is what this process is. So.
Yeah. But it's just
it could be a lizard person here right now, and you're
the same thing. Yeah, I could be, because all I could be doing is projecting. I'm projecting. Dustin's seeing a projection of light reflecting off of the energy that makes me up. So if the energy that makes me up is more aggressive and predatory, perhaps if Dustin were in distress, if I were tying him to a table and cutting him up with a ritual dagger, and thinking that I was sucking his energy, Dustin might see me as a lizard, whether I'm a lizard or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though I might not physically shapeshift into a lizard, I would be cold and calculating and regarding Dustin as, nothing, basically, and he might see me as a lizard, just like a lizard doesn't think about what the frog it's eating is thinking or feeling. It's just using it for nourishment. It's predatory. It's cold reptilian. And even talk about our reptilian brain. Tim, you know a lot about the reptilian brain, I'm sure, being a student of psychology.
It's not proven.
Well, but you know a lot about the idea of it, though.
It's the idea of the brain structure, just all the way they don't have an upper, higher level thinking. There's no white matter, so it's just the same reason a chicken can survive with its head cut off.
It's just straight survival.
Well, no, like you may have removed its head, but the brain stem's still there, and so you've just removed the chicken's ability to eat and see and stuff. But like, we got a lot of stuff up here, and not all the creatures do.
Well, but the reptilian brain, part of your brain, is the part that wants to eat and fuck, right?
Yeah, but the implication is we used to be reptiles, and that's just not.
Oh, okay.
So when they say the reptilian brain, what they really mean is low order thinking.
Right.
And really all that is, though, is reptiles never evolved past that, and we did. Like, we're not.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that part of our brain is reptile. It just means that this part of our brain that carries out the functions that a reptile's brain carries out and never gets past, we have a part of us deep inside that's just for survival that carries out that same way. So if you take somebody, for instance,
the part in the zombie films that keeps you going.
Yeah,
basically, yeah.
So if you get to the point where, like you mentioned in zombie films, there's a lot of zombie films where some people may begin to eat their fellow human beings because that's the only food left. Well, or not zombie foods, but survival films or something. And in zombie films, it could even be that you kill the other human beings to get the resources that they have. But basically that's your lizard brain or your reptile brain coming out, because you're now it's down to survival. So you lose all compassion, you lose all empathy, you basically become a temporary psychopath in order to fulfill that function, that need for yourself to survive. So if we're in a survival scenario and you come right down to it and you're starving to death, and you normally wouldn't kill your friend, but in some cases, that survival scenario, you might starve, and that reptile brain might take over for some people. And it's it's been maybe not even kill your friend, but eat him, like that movie Alive where everybody died, but eventually they ate the ones that died or whatever. But either way, you got something deep inside of your brain that wants you to survive, and that's the whole idea about talking about reptiles, is that once they turn off that compassion, once they turn off the part of their humanity that sees you as something to be empathetic to, once you become an energy source for them, once you become a ritual body, part of a ritual, they cease to be human being to the victim, right? The victim, rather than perceiving the light bouncing off of them in such a way that forms them and creates the form of a human being, it may create the form of a reptile. It may even appear to shapeshift into it. I've had migraines where, I saw things shapeshift, and I've taken LSD and I've seen things shapeshift. So don't tell me your brain can't make things shapeshift if it's stimulated in a certain way. So I fully believe that somebody who is at the hands, who is a victim to some of this ritual abuse where they're being tortured, from physically, mentally, emotionally, visually, auditorily, nasally. Basically, all your senses are being overwhelmed when you're in being involved in one of these rituals. You've got brimstone smoke, and you've got sulfur smoke, and you've got loud music or chanting or drums, and you've got pain, and you've got ritualistic symbols drawn on the floor, and fire, and all these different things adding together. And then you have have a person doing a ceremony who's dressed up in some kind of robe or something, and they come up to you and cut you with something. I think it's fully possible, if you were in that situation, that you might see them, whether they actually physically are or not, that you might see them appear as a lizard to you. But anyway, that's kind of the long breakdown of that. But I think that ultimately that's the kind of thing that Ike was describing, at least when I watched some of his presentations about 15 years ago. It's been a long time since I've seen any of it. He had one called Beyond the Cutting Edge, was really, really good, like I was mentioned earlier in the show. But I feel like the Y-Files draws attention away from those things, makes people feel as if they've gotten the information that they can get from a presentation like that, and helps them to discard it. And even though you feel like you're getting something new and original, you're still just getting the approved narrative version of it.
Or maybe he puts out that stuff at the end. He's like, like when you lay down something real, but you're like, I don't know, man. That's just, just saying, you're like, hey, that's what you're like. It's like, yeah, but I don't know.
I mean, I would be all right with that, but it's kind of like he does that to a degree, but at the same time, he obviously in each episode there's certain things he wants you to discount and associate with certain things that maybe not be connected. Like I said, after a while, I've only watched about 4 of them, but each of the Wi-Fi episodes I showed was very entertaining, very interesting. There were some things in some of them that I had no idea about. In this one, I pretty much, knew everything, had seen everything in it. Like I said, we've talked 2 hours on pretty much every subject that he hit in there, except for maybe a couple. But at any rate, I wanted to see what you guys thought of it. You've been quiet tonight, chat. Maybe
it's been bucks.
Yeah, maybe y'all will pick us up later and be able to watch this at a later time. But it's 11:46, so let's get the hell out of here.